Constantinople, 1520. Spring morning. Mahidevran Sultan stands at her window watching merchant ships cross the Bosphorus. She's 35 years old and at this moment she is untouchable. Her apartments span the entire eastern wing of the harem. 50 servants answer to her command. When she moves through the marble corridors, women press themselves against walls and bow low. Not because protocol demands it. Because crossing Mahidevran means destroying your future in this palace. She earned this position 15 years ago by doing the one thing that matters in the Ottoman succession system. She gave Sultan Suleiman his first son, a boy named Mustafa. He's 5 years old now, already showing the kind of intelligence that makes tutors excited and nervous in equal measure. Sharp mind. Natural charisma. The kind of child who'll be referenced in history books. Everyone in Constantinople knows Mustafa will be Sultan one day. The math is simple and brutal. Eldest capable son inherits the throne. Which means Mahidevran's future is written in imperial law. When Suleiman dies, Mustafa becomes Sultan. When Mustafa becomes Sultan, Mahidevran becomes Valide Sultan, Queen Mother, second most powerful person in the empire. That position is guaranteed. Unshakable. This morning, her chief lady-in-waiting brings the daily reports. Household accounts. Petitions from lesser concubines. News from the city. And one detail that barely registers. New captives arrived yesterday from the northern campaigns. Among those arrivals is a 17-year-old girl from Ruthenia. Red hair that marks her as foreign. Skin too pale. She's been crying since they brought her through the gates. The chief eunuch gave her a new name, Hurrem, the cheerful one. Ironic since she hasn't stopped weeping. Mahidevran never learns this name. Never sees the girl's face. Never registers her existence at all. That's the first mistake. 3 months pass. Summer heat settles over Constantinople. One evening in June, Suleiman sends word to the harem. He wants female company tonight. The chief eunuch makes the selection according to rotation protocol. The system is designed to prevent favoritism, to ensure the sultan distributes his attention. He selects Hurrem. Not because she's special. Because it's her turn. When Hurrem enters Suleiman's chambers that night, she's terrified. She's 17. She's been a slave for 4 months. She has no idea what he expects. But she's also been watching, learning, surviving. She's observed how the harem works. Who has power and why. What the other concubines do wrong, how they focus on physical appeal, on practice seductions, on trying to be perfect fantasy objects. None of them treat him like a person. Suleiman is reviewing documents when she enters. He's 30 years old. He's been sultan for 5 years. He looks up when Hurrem enters. She bows correctly, then straightens and just looks at him. Not with practiced seduction. With genuine curiosity. You look tired, she says in her accented Turkish. It's possibly the worst thing you could say to a sultan. You don't comment on the sultan's appearance. You don't imply weakness. But Suleiman blinks. Pauses. Something in his face relaxes. I'm tired. There's a situation developing with the Safavids that has no good solution. Tell me about it, Hurrem says. And here's where everything changes. Because she doesn't say it like a concubine trying to seem interested. She says it like someone who actually wants to know. Suleiman finds himself actually explaining the situation. The diplomatic complications. The military logistics. The political calculations. Hurrem listens. Asks questions. Some are naive, she doesn't understand Ottoman politics. But some are surprisingly sharp. She's intelligent. More than that, she's engaged. An hour passes. Then 2. At some point, Suleiman forgets this is a concubine. He's just talking to someone who's listening. Then he starts telling her about a poem he's been working on. He recites a few lines. Waits for the usual breathless praise. Hurrem tilts her head. The rhythm is beautiful. But the meter breaks in the 3rd line. May I show you? You don't correct the sultan. This is how concubines end up sent away or worse. Suleiman stares at her for 3 long seconds. Then he leans forward. Show me. She does. And she's right. They spend the next hour working on the poem together. She's not just agreeing with him, she's pushing back when she thinks he's wrong. When she finally leaves his chambers the next morning, Suleiman sits alone with the revised verses and realizes he just had the most interesting conversation he's had in months. He calls for her again the next night. And the night after that. By the 20th night, word has spread through the harem. Mahidevran hears about it from one of her ladies. The sultan has been seeing the Ruthenian girl repeatedly. Mahidevran is reviewing fabric samples. She barely looks up. How many times? 20 consecutive nights, my lady? That gets her attention. 20 consecutive nights is unusual, but still manageable. Give it time. The rotation system will reassert itself. Keep me informed, she says. By the 60th night, Mahidevran is pacing her chambers while her most trusted advisor delivers the report. 60 nights in a row. He's not seeing anyone else. He's abandoned the rotation entirely. That's impossible. But even as she says it, she knows it's true. She's felt the change in the palace. The way officials look at her differently now. Not with fear, with calculation. Like they're reassessing her value. There's more, her advisor says. The girl is pregnant. Mahidevran goes very still. Pregnant. Fine. The Sultan fathers children. That's expected. Once this harem gives birth, she'll join the ranks of other Hasiki sultans. And per the sacred rule, one mother, one son, she'll never bear the sultan another child. When she gives birth, the rotation will resume. This is just an infatuation. It will pass. But 6 months later, something happens that shouldn't be possible. Harem gets pregnant again. The news reaches Mahidevran on a Tuesday morning. She's in the garden when her advisor appears, moving quickly, face pale. What is it? The Ruthenian girl. She's pregnant again. Mahidevran's world tilts. That's not possible. She already bore a son. One mother, one son. That's the law. I know, my lady. But she's pregnant. This is a constitutional crisis. The one mother, one son rule exists for a reason. It prevents any woman from accumulating too much power through multiple male heirs. It's the foundation of succession stability. Suleiman is breaking that foundation. Mahidevran goes directly to Valide Hafsa Sultan, Suleiman's mother, the woman who rules the harem with absolute authority. This girl is violating protocol, Mahidevran says, keeping her voice steady. The Sultan must be reminded of the rules his ancestors established. Hafsa's face is unreadable. She's 70 years old. She's survived harem politics that would have destroyed lesser women. She understands exactly what's happening and why it's dangerous. I will speak to my son, she says. That afternoon, Hafsa summons Suleiman. The conversation happens behind closed doors, but servants report raised voices. Hafsa explaining the wisdom and tradition. The reasons the rules exist. The dangers of allowing one woman too much influence. Suleiman listens with apparent respect. Thanks his mother. Assures her he understands. That night he returns to Hurrem's chambers. In 1522, Hurrem gives birth to her second son. They name him Abdullah. The impossible is happening. 200 years of Ottoman tradition is bending under the weight of one man's obsession with one woman. Mahidevran sends servants to observe Hurrem's chambers. The reports that come back are disturbing. The Sultan doesn't just visit for sex. He stays for hours. They talk. About everything. Politics, poetry, philosophy, theology. He reads her his verses and she critiques them, points out flaws, suggests improvements. He discusses state matters with her. She makes him laugh. Real, deep laughter that echoes through the corridors. And Hurrem is building her own network. Cultivating relationships with palace officials. Rewarding servants who show loyalty. Making strategic alliances. She's playing the political game with frightening skill. When baby Abdullah dies in infancy, Mahidevran allows herself a moment of hope. Perhaps this loss will remind Suleiman of tradition's wisdom. Instead, Hurrem gets pregnant again. And again. And again. By 1530, she's given birth to 5 surviving children. Mehmed, Salim, Bayezid, Sahanger, and a daughter named Miraima. The entire harem is in shock. This has never happened. Mahidevran watches her position erode like a cliff face under relentless waves. Her stipend hasn't been cut, yet. Her apartments are still prestigious, for now. But she feels the shift. The way servants are slower to respond. The way officials are less interested in her favor. The way other concubines look at her with pity instead of envy. But she still has Mustafa. Her son is 15 years old now. Tall, charismatic, showing exactly the qualities that will make him a legendary sultan. The Janissaries love him. The common people adore him. That future, Mustafa as sultan, Mahidevran as Valide sultan, that's still solid. Still guaranteed by law and tradition. She clings to that certainty like a drowning woman clinging to driftwood. Then comes a Thursday afternoon in July 1534. The marble bath chamber in the harem. Steam rising from heated pools. Water echoing off stone walls. Afternoon light filtering through high windows. Mahidevran is there with her attendants. It's part of the daily routine. Hours spent in ritual bathing. It's one of the few places where the rigid hierarchy relaxes slightly. The door opens. Hurrem enters with her own attendants. For 14 years they've maintained careful distance. Cold courtesy. Perfect deference. Both women understanding that open conflict serves neither. Both women understanding that a war is happening anyway, silently, beneath every interaction. But today something breaks. Maybe it's the heat. Maybe it's 14 years of accumulated rage. Maybe it's the news that arrived this morning. Hurrem is pregnant again, impossibly. Maybe it's the sound of construction that woke Mahidevran at dawn, the hammers expanding Hurrem's apartments while hers shrink year by year. Maybe it's just that humans can only take so much. Hurrem is washing her hair. One of her attendants is helping, pouring water from a silver pitcher. She's humming something, a lullaby probably. Like she has every right to be content. Mahidevran's voice cuts through the steam. You forget your place, concubine? The bath chamber goes silent. Water stops moving. Attendants freeze. Hurrem looks up slowly. Water drips from her red hair. Her face is carefully neutral. I'm sorry, my lady. Have I offended you in some way? My son is the eldest prince. He will be sultan. That is written in law and tradition. You are nothing but an amusement. A temporary distraction. You may have borne 5 children, but Mustafa is the heir. And when Mustafa is sultan, you will remember exactly what you are, a slave who forgot her place. The attendants are holding their breath. This is the kind of confrontation that ends careers. But Mahidevran is past caring about pretense. 14 years of watching her power erode. 14 years of silent humiliation. It's all coming out now. Hurrem stands up slowly. Water streams off her body. When she speaks, her voice is quiet, almost gentle, which somehow makes it more devastating. If I am nothing, why does he spend every night in my chambers? Why has he not called for another woman in over a decade? Why does he write poetry to me while you sleep alone? Why does he consult me on matters of state while you hear news third-hand from servants? Why do officials seek my favor instead of yours? Because you've bewitched him. Mahidevran's voice rises. She's losing control and she knows it, but she can't stop. You've used some kind of sorcery? I made him laugh, Hurrem interrupts. I treated him like a person instead of a god. I listened when he spoke. I challenged him when he was wrong. I gave him something you never could, an equal. And that terrifies you, doesn't it? Because you built your entire identity on bearing his first son, and now you're watching that foundation crumble. Mahidevran's hand moves before her brain can stop it. The slap echoes through the bath chamber like a thunderclap. For 3 seconds, absolutely nothing moves. The slap mark blooms red across Hurrem's pale cheek. Water drips somewhere. Steam drifts. Then Hurrem's eyes fill with tears. Not dramatic sobs. Quiet, genuine tears. I cannot live like this, she says, voice breaking. I cannot remain a slave in a house where I am beaten by other slaves. I will go to the Sultan. I will ask for my freedom. Either he grants it and I leave this place, or I will die here. I would rather die than endure one more day of this. She turns and walks out. Water pools where she stood. Her attendants follow in shocked silence. The bath chamber erupts in whispers. Mahidevran stands there, hands still raised, heart pounding, realizing with cold, creeping horror that she's just made a catastrophic mistake. She's given Hurrem exactly what she needed. Evidence. Witnesses. Perfect justification for whatever comes next. 3 months later, in October 1534, the announcement detonates through Constantinople. Sultan Suleiman has married his concubine Hurrem in a legal Islamic ceremony. The news spreads through the palace in minutes. Through the city in hours. Through the empire in days. Everywhere it goes, it leaves shock in its wake. Ottoman sultans don't marry. Haven't married in 145 years. The policy was established for a reason. Marriage implies partnership. Implies equality. Implies that one woman can have legal claims no concubine should possess. Suleiman has just taken a sledgehammer to that entire system. Grand Vizier Ibrahim Pasha requests an emergency audience the moment he hears. Ibrahim has been Suleiman's closest friend since childhood. If anyone can speak truth to power, it's him. He enters the Sultan's private chambers. Suleiman is signing documents. He looks up and smiles. Ibrahim. You heard the news. Majesty. Ibrahim chooses his words carefully. This marriage sets a dangerous precedent. By elevating Hurrem to legal wife, you give her legitimacy that complicates succession. You create competing claims among your sons. This is precisely what the old system was designed to prevent. You're inviting the possibility of civil war. Suleiman sets down his pen. I have made my decision. But Majesty, I have made my decision, Ibrahim. The tone is final. Ibrahim leaves the meeting understanding that he's just witnessed something unprecedented. The Sultan has chosen love over tradition, passion over stability, one woman over centuries of imperial policy. Within a week the changes begin. Hurrem, now formally Hurrem Sultan, legal wife, receives unprecedented privileges. She's allowed to remain in the old palace. She's given her own income stream, her own properties, direct correspondence with foreign rulers. She begins sitting in on meetings with advisors, suggesting appointments, commissioning public works. She becomes, in every practical sense, co-ruler of the Ottoman Empire. And Mahidevran wakes one morning to the sound of hammers. The construction crew arrives at dawn. 50 workers with carts of marble and timber and tools. They set up outside Mahidevran's apartments and begin breaking walls. She sends her chief attendant to investigate. The woman returns pale. They're expanding the Lady Hurrem's quarters, my lady. Expanding where? Into the chambers adjacent to yours. Mahidevran walks to the window. Watches workers measuring, marking, beginning demolition. They're building directly adjacent to her chambers. The new construction will share a wall with her bedroom. Every morning for the next 6 months, Mahidevran wakes to the sound of her own replacement being built. Walls breaking. Stone being cut and laid. Men shouting instructions. The rhythmic pounding of hammers. The walls between their quarters are thin. She can hear everything from Hurrem's side. Laughter. Music. Children playing. The Sultan's voice. Sometimes she hears them making love and she has to press a pillow over her face to muffle her own sounds. Not of arousal but of rage so pure it feels like drowning. She's being forced to witness her obsolescence being constructed one hammer strike at a time. Then come the reductions. One morning the chief eunuch arrives with a scroll. I regret to inform you, my lady, that there have been some administrative reorganizations. What kind of reorganizations? Your household staff is being reduced. 3 of your ladies will be reassigned to Lady Hurrem's household. Which 3? He names them. They're her most trusted servants. Women who've attended her for 15 years. On whose authority? The Sultan's, my lady. That afternoon she watches 3 women who've served her loyally for over a decade pack their belongings and walk to Hurrem's expanded quarters. They don't look back. 2 weeks later, another reduction. Her monthly allowance is cut by 20%. Budget constraints, the treasurer explains. The new construction projects are expensive. Mahidevran notes that Hurrem's allowance isn't being cut. But she says nothing. A month after that, palace officials inform her that her apartments require essential maintenance. The marble is cracking. The walls need reinforcement. She'll need to move to temporary quarters. How long will the repairs take? A few months at most, my lady. The repairs take 6 months. And when they're finally complete, Mahidevran isn't moved back. She's informed that those chambers have been absorbed into Hurrem's expanded quarters. The new rooms they've prepared for her are smaller. Windows facing the courtyard instead of the Bosphorus. Lower ceilings. Walls painted white instead of decorated. Every reduced square foot is a calculated message about her falling position. Palace officials who once sought her favor now barely acknowledge her presence. When she enters a room, the bows are perfunctory. When she speaks, responses are polite but distant. She watches servants who once competed for her approval now cluster around Hurrem instead. Watches officials who once brought her news now carry their information elsewhere. Watches the power structure she spent 19 years building collapse around her. But she still has Mustafa. This is what she tells herself every morning. Her son is 19 years old now. Tall, charismatic, brilliant. He's been given his first provincial governorship. Reports arrive regularly about his successes. How he settles disputes with wisdom. How he manages the provincial treasury with efficiency. How the local people adore him. The Janissaries sing songs about him. When he visits Constantinople, soldiers line the streets. Children run after his horse. Old women call blessings down on his head. He is everything a sultan should be. And when Suleiman dies, Mustafa will inherit the throne. The law of succession is clear. And when Mustafa becomes sultan, Mahidevran will become Valide sultan. All of this humiliation will be reversed. All of Hurrem's power will evaporate. The natural order will reassert itself. That future is solid. Guaranteed by 2 centuries of Ottoman law. Then comes November 1541. A messenger arrives at her chambers. Official courier bearing the Sultan's seal. Mahidevran breaks the seal with shaking hands and reads the decree twice. Prince Mustafa is being reassigned from his current provincial governorship to Manisa, a city hundreds of miles from Constantinople, far from the center of power. And Mahidevran is commanded to accompany him. She's being exiled. The ship leaves Constantinople on a morning when the sky is the color of old iron and rain threatens but doesn't fall. Mahidevran stands on the deck watching the city recede. The domes and minarets of Topkapi Palace shrinking. The Bosphorus widening into open water. 26 years. She was barely 15 when she entered that palace. She learned, built networks, cultivated alliances, secured her position one careful decision at a time. All of it left behind. The journey to Manisa takes 4 days. 4 days of watching coastlines slide past. Of understanding that every mile is taking her further from the center of power. Further from any ability to influence events. Further from matching at all. Manisa itself is beautiful. Rolling hills covered in olive groves and vineyards. A prosperous market city. Sunlight that's somehow softer than Constantinople's harsh glare. Under other circumstances she might appreciate it. But she understands exactly what this exile means. She's been removed from the political chessboard. Separated from her information sources. Prevented from building new alliances. Cut off from any ability to counter Hurrem's influence over Suleiman. She's been neutralized without a blade being drawn, without a single public accusation, without violating any law. She's simply been relocated. For her son's benefit, the official documents say. No one believes this fiction. But no one can challenge it either. Mustafa governs Manisa brilliantly. He's 26 years old, in the prime of life, demonstrating exactly the qualities that will make him remembered as one of the great sultans. He administers justice with wisdom. Settles disputes fairly. Maintains security without oppression. Encourages trade without corruption. Reports of his success travel back to Constantinople regularly. This should be good news. Instead, it's ammunition. Because in Constantinople, 200 miles away, Hurrem Sultan is reading every single report. Studying every account of Mustafa's growing reputation. Noting every story of his popularity. And she's whispering questions in Suleiman's ear. They're in his private chambers. Late evening. Suleiman is reviewing documents. Hurrem is embroidering, her needle flashing in lamplight. A domestic scene. Comfortable silence. The reports from Manisa are impressive, she says casually, not looking up. Mustafa is doing well. He is, Suleiman agrees. Pride in his voice. He's exactly what I hoped he'd become. The people certainly love him. The Janissaries too. As they should. He's an excellent governor. Hurrem makes 3 more stitches before speaking again. I heard soldiers singing about him in the market yesterday. Comparing him to Mem the Conqueror. To Selim the Grim. Suleiman looks up from his papers. That's a high compliment. It is, Hurrem agrees. Though I wonder. She trails off. Goes back to her stitching. Silent for 30 seconds. This is the technique she's perfected over 17 years. Plant a seed, then let it grow in silence. Wonder what? He finally asks. Oh, nothing. I'm sure it's nothing. Hurrem. She sets down her embroidery. Meets his eyes. Why do they sing about him now? While you still rule? Why do they compare him to sultans of the past instead of celebrating the sultan of the present? Because he's doing excellent work. Of course. I'm not suggesting otherwise. He's your son. He's brilliant. Everyone can see he'll make a fine sultan someday. Pause. Just long enough. When the time comes. Generations from now, after you've lived a long and prosperous life. But what? History shows that ambitious princes sometimes grow impatient. That popularity with the army can be dangerous. I'm sure Mustafa is completely loyal. I'm sure all this adoration doesn't give him ideas. She picks up her embroidery again. I'm sure of it. But the seed is planted. And over months and years, Hurrem plants more. The Janissaries seem very eager for him to return to Constantinople. Why do you think that is? He's building quite a following in Manisa. Such popularity could be dangerous, couldn't it? If he were ambitious. Which I'm sure he's not. I heard 2 generals discussing him at dinner. They seemed excited about his capabilities. Eager almost. As if they were anticipating something. Never accusations. Never direct suggestions of disloyalty. Just observations. Questions. Wonderings. Let Suleiman's own paranoia complete the picture. And slowly, imperceptibly, like water wearing down stone, the suggestions take root. Because Suleiman knows from Ottoman history that succession is violent. His own grandfather killed his brothers to secure the throne. His father did the same. The history books are soaked in fratricide, in civil wars sparked by princes who couldn't wait. Hurrem understands this fear, and she exploits it with surgical precision. In Manisa, Mahidevran receives reports about what's happening in Constantinople. Her network is smaller now, her sources less reliable, but news still trickles through. Officials making snide comments about Mustafa's popularity. Whispers in the palace about his ambition. She writes to Suleiman. Careful letters. Respectful. Reminding him of Mustafa's loyalty. Of their shared history. The letters go unanswered. She writes to other officials. To generals she once cultivated. Reminding them that Mustafa is the legitimate heir. Some letters are returned unopened. Others receive brief, non-committal responses. No one wants to be seen supporting Mustafa too openly. In 1536, news arrives that makes Mahidevran's blood run cold. Grand Vizier Ibrahim Pasha has been found strangled in his bedchamber. Ibrahim, Suleiman's closest friend since childhood. The man who should have been untouchable. Dead. The official reason is vague. Something about overreaching his authority. Forgetting his place. But Mahidevran understands what really happened. Ibrahim maintained friendly correspondence with Mustafa. Not secret correspondence, completely normal mentorship. Political advice. Strategic suggestions. But Hurrem obtained copies of those letters. Showed them to Suleiman with careful interpretation. Why would your Grand Vizier correspond so frequently with a provincial governor? What are they planning? The execution happened within days. The message is clear. Getting close to Mustafa is dangerous. Supporting him is potentially fatal. Anyone who appears too friendly with the prince is now a target. Mahidevran sits in her chambers in Manisa, hundreds of miles from where the murder happened, and understands that the trap is closing. That Hurrem isn't just undermining Mustafa's position, she's building a case. Piece by piece. Letter by letter. Whisper by whisper. She's transforming a loyal son into a perceived threat. And Mahidevran, exiled and isolated, can do nothing to stop it. Years pass. 5 years. 10 years. 12 years of living in Manisa. 12 years of watching Mustafa govern brilliantly while knowing that every success is being weaponized against him. Mahidevran ages. Her hair goes gray. Lines deepen around her eyes. Her hands develop a tremor. She's 61 years old now. But she endures. Because Mustafa is still alive. Still governing. Still proving himself worthy. Still the legitimate heir. Still her son. Then comes September 1553. A messenger arrives on a Tuesday afternoon. Official courier from the Sultan's campaign headquarters. His horse is lathered with sweat. He's been riding hard. Mahidevran is in her sitting room when they announce him. Something in the servant's voice makes her hands go cold. The Sultan is campaigning against Persia. His army is encamped at Iregli. He summons Prince Mustafa to join the campaign and demonstrate his loyalty before the assembled forces. Mahidevran reads the decree 3 times. The words don't change. She finds Mustafa in the administrative wing, reviewing tax records. When she enters, he looks up with that smile that still, after 38 years, reminds her of the 5-year-old boy he once was. Mother. I received father's summons. Finally, a chance to speak with him directly. To demonstrate my loyalty in person. Don't go. The words come out flat. Art. Mustafa's smile fades. What? Don't go. This is a trap. Hurrem has spent 12 years poisoning your father against you. If you go to that camp, you won't come back. Mustafa sets down his papers slowly. Mother, if I refuse the Sultan's summons, I confirm every accusation. I prove the disloyalty they claim. My only chance is to go. To speak with father face to face. To show him the truth. The truth? Your father hasn't cared about truth for 20 years. He's still my father. I am his loyal son. I've done nothing wrong. When he sees me, when we speak directly, all these lies will be exposed. He believes this. Despite 12 years of exile. Despite Ibrahim's execution. Despite everything. He believes that truth and loyalty will protect him. Mahidevran looks at her son and sees the child who once believed she could protect him from anything. At least go armed. Take your guard. Mustafa shakes his head. Arriving with armed guards would itself be interpreted as proof of treasonous intent. My only choice is to go alone. To go trusting in father's judgment. They stand there surrounded by tax records and legal documents. All the evidence that Mustafa is exactly what a prince should be. When do you leave? Mahidevran asks. Her voice sounds distant even to her own ears. Dawn tomorrow. That night, Mahidevran doesn't sleep. She sits by her window watching stars wheel slowly overhead, watching the moon set and the sky lighten gradually toward dawn. At dawn, Mustafa comes to her chambers to say goodbye. She holds him. Not the brief formal embrace appropriate to their stations, but the desperate grip of a mother who understands this is the last time. I will return, he promises. His voice is confident. And when I do, all of this will be over. She watches him ride away. Watches his small retinue follow. Watches the morning sun make his armor gleam. Watches until he disappears over the hill and there's nothing left to see except empty road. And knows, with the absolute certainty of a mother's instinct, that she'll never see him alive again. October 6, 1553. The military camp at Iregli. Autumn sun beating down on thousands of tents. The Ottoman army is preparing for the Persian campaign, 60,000 soldiers. Mustafa arrives at midday. He's been riding for 3 days straight, eager to reach his father, to finally have the conversation that will clear up all these misunderstandings. The Janissaries line the path as he rides through the camp. They salute him. They cheer his name. They call out blessings. Some of them are weeping, grown soldiers with tears running down their weathered faces. Long live Prince Mustafa, the rightful heir, the future of the empire. This spontaneous display of affection, genuine, unforced, is the final proof Suleiman needs, or believes he needs. Because sitting in his campaign tent, listening to those cheers, Suleiman hears confirmation of everything Hurrem has been suggesting for 12 years. That Mustafa is too popular. That the army loves him too much. That a prince with this kind of following might not be content to wait. Mustafa is escorted to the Sultan's tent. The largest tent in the camp. Red silk walls. Carpet from Persia. Protocol demands he enter alone and unarmed. He straightens his robes, composes his face into proper filial respect, and walks in to finally speak truth to his father. Suleiman sits on a raised platform at the tent's far end. But he's not alone. Behind a curtain at the back wait 7 mute executioners. Each one over 6 feet tall. Each one trained specifically for this kind of work. When Mustafa enters and bows low before his father, Suleiman gives a signal. Perhaps a nod. Perhaps a hand gesture. The executioners emerge from behind the curtain. For one heartbeat, Mustafa doesn't understand. Then he sees the silk bowstrings in their hands. Sees the purpose in their movements. Understanding crashes over him. Father, he begins. They're on him before he can finish the word. Mustafa fights. Of course he fights. He's 38 years old, trained as a warrior since childhood. He's strong, fast, desperate. His elbow connects with an executioner's face. Bone crunches. The man drops. Mustafa's fist hits another in the throat. The executioner staggers back, choking. For 3 seconds it looks like he might actually escape. Then the other 5 executioners swarm him. 7 men were sent. Even with 2 down, 5 against 1 are insurmountable odds. They force him down. He's still fighting. Still trying to speak. Father, please, I've done nothing, I'm loyal. One executioner loops a silk bowstring around Mustafa's neck. Another pulls from the opposite direction. The technique is efficient, practiced. The silk is thin and strong. It cuts into flesh. Mustafa's words turn to choking sounds. His hands claw at the string. His feet kick against the carpet. His face turns red, then purple. Suleiman watches from behind the curtain. Mustafa's struggles weaken. The choking sounds fade. His movements become spasms, then twitches, then stillness. It takes less than 5 minutes from the moment the executioners emerge to the moment Mustafa's body stops moving. When it's finished, when there's just a corpse on the carpet, Suleiman emerges from behind the curtain. He looks at his son's body. At the face gone slack in death. At the silk bowstring still embedded in the neck. Then he orders the body displayed outside the tent for the Janissaries to see. As proof. As warning. When the soldiers see Mustafa's corpse hanging in front of the Sultan's tent, the camp nearly explodes. 60,000 armed men who adored the prince. They're seconds away from open mutiny. Only the presence of Suleiman himself, surrounded by his personal guard, prevents immediate rebellion. The Janissaries stand in formation, tears streaming down their faces, watching the prince they loved reduced to an object lesson. Some of them are praying. Some cursing. Some just staring in shocked silence. News spreads from the camp like wildfire. Within days, everyone in the empire knows. Within weeks, the entire Islamic world has heard. And in Manisa, 200 miles away, a mother waits. October 10, 1553. 4 days after the execution. Mahidevran is in her sitting room. She's been unable to eat since Mustafa left. Unable to sleep. She paces her chambers like a caged animal. When the messenger is announced, she knows before he speaks. Knows from the way he won't meet her eyes. Knows from the formal stiffness of his posture. Prince Mustafa has been executed for treason against the Sultan. The words are delivered in the flat bureaucratic tone of official communiques. Like announcing a change in tax policy. For 3 seconds Mahidevran doesn't move. Doesn't breathe. Her mind simply refuses to process the words. Then the scream tears from her throat. It's not a human sound. It's primal, the howl of an animal caught in a trap. Every servant in the palace will later report they heard it. Some will have nightmares about that sound for years. Mahidevran collapses. Her legs simply stop supporting her. She hits the floor hard enough to bruise. And then she's tearing at her clothes. Clawing at her face. Beating her head against the stone floor until her vision swims and blood runs down her forehead. Servants rush in. 5 of them needed to restrain her. To stop her from literally killing herself with grief. They're screaming for help, for the physician, for anyone who knows what to do. They carry her to her bed. She fights them. Screaming words that don't form sentences. Making sounds that express what language can't contain. The physician arrives. Administers something, opium probably. It doesn't help. Mahidevran lies in bed staring at nothing, occasionally making small wounded sounds like a dying animal. For 3 days she doesn't speak. Doesn't eat. Doesn't acknowledge anyone's presence. Servants force water between her lips so she won't die of thirst. When lucidity returns on the 4th day, it comes with a clarity that's almost worse than the madness. She knows exactly who's responsible. Not Suleiman, he was just the weapon. But Hurrem loaded that weapon. Hurrem aimed it with 12 years of careful targeting. Hurrem pulled the trigger through whispers and suggestions and systematic character assassination. 12 years of transforming a loyal son into a perceived threat. 12 years of building a case, piece by patient piece, until Suleiman was convinced that his firstborn son was plotting rebellion. 12 years culminating in judicial murder. And Mahidevran was forced to watch it happen. Exiled, isolated, powerless. On the 4th day, when she can finally speak coherently, Mahidevran sends a message to Constantinople. Formal request through proper channels. She's asking permission to attend her son's funeral. To see his body one last time. To perform a mother's final duty. The response arrives 3 days later. It comes not from Suleiman but from court officials loyal to Hurrem. Permission denied. Mahidevran reads those 2 words and something inside her breaks that hasn't broken yet. Some final barrier between functioning person and complete destruction. She's not allowed to attend her own son's funeral. She's not permitted to leave Manisa. She's forbidden even this basic mercy of closure. Instead, Mustafa is buried in Bursa. Hundreds of people attend. Janissaries in full dress uniform. Common people weeping in the streets. Poets composing elegies. And his mother sits confined in quarters 200 miles away, prevented from being there, prevented from the rituals that might make his death feel real, prevented from everything except the endless repetition of the last moment she saw him alive. Riding away. Turning in his saddle to wave. Smiling with confidence that everything would be fine. She's been neutralized completely. Not just politically. Now psychologically. Emotionally. Spiritually. They've broken her. Finally. Totally. And they don't stop. 6 months after Mustafa's execution, Mahidevran receives another official notice. Her stipend is being reduced. Again. The official justification is budget constraints. She notes that Hurrem's household sees no such reductions. Hurrem's construction projects continue. Her charitable foundations continue receiving funding. Only Mahidevran's resources shrink. Her household staff is reduced to bare minimum. 3 servants where she once had 50. Requests for basic maintenance on her aging quarters are denied or delayed for months. The roof leaks. She mentions it to officials. They nod, promise to look into it. The leak continues for 8 months before anyone repairs it. She's still called Sultan as a courtesy title. Still addressed with formal respect. But everyone understands it's hollow. She has no power. No influence. No future. No purpose. She exists in a state of civil death, legally alive but politically erased. And the psychological warfare continues through calculated reminders that she hasn't suffered enough yet. When Hurrem's sons Selim and Bayezid are given provincial governorships near Manisa, they hold public ceremonies. Elaborate affairs. Parades through the streets. Celebrations that Mahidevran can see from her window but cannot attend. She stands at that window watching parades for Hurrem's sons. Watching the empire celebrate their potential. Watching the future unfold for them in ways it never will for Mustafa. Letters arrive periodically from Constantinople. Official announcements. News of Hurrem's latest charitable works. Another mosque commissioned. Another public bath opened. Another foundation established. Each letter is a knife wound. Each notification a reminder carefully designed to keep Mahidevran's suffering fresh. I won. You lost. Your son is dead and my sons will be sultans. You are nothing and I am everything, and there's not one thing you can do about it except continue breathing and suffering. Years pass. 5 years. 10. 15. Mahidevran ages in Manisa. Trapped in her reduced quarters. Forced to witness the world moving forward without her. Officials who once knew her name forget she exists. Younger servants don't even understand who she was. She becomes a ghost haunting her own life. Her hair goes completely white. Her hands develop a permanent tremor. Her body becomes a catalog of aches and limitations. She's 73 years old. She's been in this prison for 20 years. She's outlived her son by 5 years, and every morning she wakes up and wonders why her body won't just stop. Then comes April 15, 1558. A messenger arrives from Constantinople. Not the usual official courier. A lower-level servant sent with news that apparently doesn't warrant high-level communication. Hurrem Sultan is dead. Mahidevran receives this news in her sitting room. The servant who delivers it watches her face carefully, uncertain how she'll react. Mahidevran's expression doesn't change. She simply nods once. Thank you. You may go. The servant leaves. Mahidevran sits in her chair looking at nothing. Because what is there to say? What victory is there in outliving your enemy when your enemy already took everything that mattered? Hurrem died at 74 years old. She died in Constantinople in the palace, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She died as the Sultan's legal wife. She died secure in the knowledge that her son Selim would inherit the throne. Everything she fought for she achieved. Death came for her only after victory was absolute and permanent. Mahidevran will live another 23 years. 23 years past any possible relevance. 23 years of watching Hurrem's legacy unfold while her own son's name fades. When Suleiman dies in 1566, Hurrem's son Selim becomes sultan. Just as she planned. But Hurrem's other sons don't accept defeat gracefully. Bayezid, convinced he deserves the throne over his brother Selim, launches a rebellion. The civil war Hurrem tried so hard to prevent by eliminating Mustafa, she merely postponed it. Her own sons end up fighting each other for power. Bayezid loses the war. He flees to Persia. Suleiman negotiates with the Persian Shah for his return. And then Bayezid and his 5 sons, Hurrem's grandchildren, boys ranging from age 3 to 18, are strangled with silk bowstrings. Just like Mustafa. The cycle of violence Hurrem initiated to protect her children consumed them anyway. And Mahidevran, 81 years old, sitting in her chambers in Manisa, receives this news and allows herself one small, bitter smile. The woman who orchestrated Mustafa's death lived just long enough to see her legacy stained with her own grandchildren's blood. Whether this brings Mahidevran any peace, no historical record says. But it's something. September 1581. A day when heat lies over Manisa like a wet blanket. Mahidevran Sultan dies in her chambers. She's approximately 96 years old. She's outlived everyone. Outlived Hurrem by 23 years. Outlived Suleiman by 15. Outlived her son by 28 years. 28 years of living death. 28 years of waking each morning to a world that moved on without her. The death is unremarkable. No drama. No final words. Just the quiet cessation of a very old woman who lived far longer than anyone expected. She's buried next to her son Mustafa in Bursa. The tomb is modest. Simple stone. Basic inscription. Roxelana's tomb, by contrast, is magnificent. A work of architectural beauty designed by Mimar Sinan. It sits in Istanbul, part of a massive mosque complex. Tourists visit it. Historians lecture about it. Mahidevran's tomb receives perhaps a dozen visitors a year. The Grand Viziers watched it all happen. They documented their concerns in private correspondence. Rustam Pasha wrote to a fellow official in 1555, "The Sultan's treatment of the mother of Prince Mustafa exceeds what policy requires. She poses no threat. Her son is dead. Her household is reduced. Her influence is non-existent. Yet she is tormented still. The viziers questioned whether a sultan so influenced by one woman could govern effectively. They saw the excess, the cruelty beyond any strategic justification. The punishment continuing decades past the elimination of any threat. They watched Suleiman sacrifice justice to love. They watched him turn the machinery of the Ottoman state into an instrument of domestic revenge. And they questioned his sanity. Not openly, that would be suicide. But in private letters. In quiet conversations. Because what Suleiman did to Mahidevran wasn't statecraft. It was personal. Cruel in ways that served no political purpose except satisfying his beloved's need for complete and visible victory. He gave Hurrem 28 years of prolonged revenge against a woman whose only crime was existing as an obstacle. 28 years. From Mustafa's execution to Mahidevran's death. 28 years of forcing a mother to survive her murdered son. Of denying her even the mercy of obscurity. Of making her continued existence a monument to what happens when you oppose the Sultan's beloved. In Bursa today, if you know where to look, you can find that tomb. It sits in a quiet courtyard, overshadowed by larger monuments. The stone is weathered. 5 centuries of rain and wind have worn down the carved inscriptions. Roxelana became legend. Suleiman became the Magnificent. And Mahidevran became forgotten. She waited 28 years in Manisa. 28 years past her son's death. 28 years of punishment for the crime of existing before Roxelana arrived. Where a woman who once ruled an empire finally rests beside the son they murdered.